Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel Airbus What's It Doing Now. This is a quick video about step climbs or step outs. It's not something that we use an awful lot, and particularly if you are in line training, most of your sectors will be relatively short, and so step climbs might not be something that you have used in your recent training or in your recent past. And for those of you that fly the line fairly regularly and in fairly conventional airspace with fairly continuous climbs, your cruise altitude will be achieved sort of fairly early on, and so there might not have been much chance to use this facility in the flight management guidance. So there may be, however, some great opportunities opportunities for use of the step climbs, particularly if you are on longer sectors, and there are a number of reasons which I'll come on to in a moment. Ultimately there are two types of step climb that the FMGC, whichever type it is, they may differ slightly. So look at your FMGC, look at your FCOM section for the FMGC to find out which is most applicable for you, and of course your aircraft registration would need to be entered there as well. But ultimately, two types of step altitudes. You've got the optimal, where the FMGC will calculate where the best time is to climb given the various data that's been inputted. Make sure, of course, you've got winds, zero fuel weight, so it knows the fuel calculated and the currency of G and the weight of the aircraft, so it can make the predictions. And the aircraft will look ahead, and at about 20 miles before, depending on the altitude that's optimum, will program then that step descent. So optimal, which I'm going to show you how to do that in a minute, or a geographical one where the flight plan or ATC requires an aircraft to be at a certain level at a certain waypoint. And again, it's in the same page, but there's just two types of step altitude. So just to review, there's an optimal and geographical. Okay, all this is in the FCOM if you want to go and have a look at it. Why would we need to do it? Well, the OFP calculates a cruise lower than optimal sometimes due to airspace restrictions, and a step may need to be included somewhere along in your flight plan. So if you have a look at your operational flight plan, depending on who is contracted to provide your flight plans and your performance, they will give you a cruise level. Now on ours in particular, if you're at a cruise altitude for more than a set period of time, that cruise altitude will go into the cruise in the performance section of your OFP. And there's a common mistake that flight level is inputted into the cruise page, into the FMGC, which is obviously not correct, because there might be some step altitudes later on. So you'll need to manually input that step altitude. So watch out for that one. The other reason you might need a step altitude is the aircraft is heavy, and as the fuel is burnt, then the optimal and recommended max cruise are obviously going to increase as the weight reduces. And so again, your OFP should give you some guidance on that. Winds aloft, I mean, they are pretty accurate nowadays, but they might be slightly different. And so if the winds are slightly different on your ND than what's actually been forecast on your OFP, then it's worth getting spot winds from other aircraft at different levels to see if you can take advantage of a less of a headwind or a stronger tailwind, for example. And you must obviously make sure that those spot winds are inputted into the FMGC at those waypoints and the various altitudes at which you might reach that geographical waypoint in order to get the proper prediction. So if the winds are different, that might be another reason why you might want a step climb. Also, ATC may request it. They may request if you are able to climb to a higher flight level than what you have been flight planned at. And again, that might be a number of reasons, because of airspace restrictions or traffic basically, and ATC are trying to facilitate traffic to avoid bottlenecks at various levels, at various waypoints, particularly FIR boundaries in airspace as you cross over to the next FIR. And also lastly, and this list isn't, conclusive at the end of the day. You might be able to think about some other reasons, but in my experience, turbulence is another reason why you might want to choose a slightly higher flight level or lower flight level. There's an argument to say here, fuel saving isn't really the issue if you're worried about turbulence, but if you want to find smoother air, it would be useful to know what the consequence of a less than optimal flight level, if you like, might be to the equation, particularly if you are or have already encroached a little bit on your contingency fuel perhaps. But again, a slightly higher flight level there with the information of the spot winds can help you make a calculated and intelligent decision about what the consequence of the smoother air might or may not provide for you. So, okay, let's take a look at the video now, and that will come up on the screen, and I'll run this through with you in real time. So, okay, so we start on a route here, and you go into the progress page. You can see what your cruise altitude here, the optimum and recommended max out here, obviously. So we're not at the optimum altitude. If you line select to a vertical revision on the right hand side, line select one right, for example, you come up with a page optimal step, enter out only. Otherwise, it'll be a geographical one. Okay, so I've just put 380 out on here. Now, this isn't the most fantastic example. I'm line training here, so we've got a relatively short sector. So it's not the perfect example. Most of my sectors are relatively short, unfortunately. But here is the opportunity now to put in an optimal stepped climb where the FMGC would calculate where that would be, and about 20 miles before approximately could calculate the commencement of that cruise, a new cruise altitude, and you would then feed that into ATC should your step climb be permitted. You could tell them exactly when that was going to be. Now in this case, because it's a relatively short sector, there's no optimal option in here, so it's not giving us the waypoint at which that would happen. Now I'm going to put a geographical waypoint in, assuming here that that's what's been required by the flight plan, or that's been required by ATC, or for any of the other reasons that I mentioned earlier on. So I have said here I'd like to climb 380, and I'd like to commence that climb critically at a waypoint Tunur, which is deep into French airspace on this particular route. So once we get that, it'll tell us the distance and the time. So it's 126 miles to go, and the time there you saw on the right hand side of the FMGC page. So you could say to ATC, we'd like to commence our climb. That's where we would like to do it, and of course you've got a distance and time of when that's going to commence. Equally, if that was an optimum climb, it would say to you when that was going to be. So if ATC asked you when that was likely to happen, you could give that information to ATC. You'll notice then on the left hand side there, on the lateral revisions, you'll notice the step climb is detailed in the FMGC on the flight plan. Now I'm just line selecting on the right hand side to have a look at the step altitude. You can see it's 380 here, the distance and the time, and then it will come up to the ND and show you where that is. So there we are, Tunur, to start the climb. Again, it's a relatively short piece of airspace, because shortly after that we're going to descend into London airspace. So not a tremendous amount of benefit to be gained there. But at least you can see how you would put that in if you're not familiar with the page, and some of the reasons as to why you might want to do that. Couple of notes, the step climb will be deleted if with a step climb's been calculated, whether it was an optimal one or a geographic one, if you don't actually climb at that point, then it will be cleared. Or if you put in a lateral revision, which then deletes the geographical waypoint at which that climb is going to be commenced, then it will go, and obviously you'll need to put in a new one or start your climb if you've gone past it. Good, short video this one, to give you a bit of more information on the use of the FMGC and some of the things that perhaps we don't see very often, and its usefulness and some of the reasons why you might want to use it. Just before I go, there's a couple of live streams that are coming up. I'm trying to get them out for next week, so heads up on that. Watch the channel. Make sure you click the bell, I think it is, on the page, and that will notify you of new videos that are coming up. Saves you having to sort of periodically come into the channel. You get notified by email and by YouTube notifications if you have those turned on. Keep the place spinning, stay safe, and I will look forward to seeing you again very soon. Thanks very much, and bye for now.